Hey everybody, welcome to the latest episode of The Rock Experience with Mike Brunn. On this episode, we're going to be discussing the newest Beatles documentary, Get Back. Now what makes this conversation so exciting to me is that there's different point of views. We have a couple of people who are big, long-time Beatles fans. I'm talking about diehards here. And then one point of view from a casual. I think that makes for a lot of interesting and great conversation, and I think you guys are going to really enjoy this. So let's jump in and let's get started. Hey everybody, welcome to the latest episode of The Rock Experience with Mike Brunn. Today I'm excited to have with me two guests, both returning. My first guest, my partner in crime, Mr. Vincent LaRussa. How you doing, buddy?
Very good on this Sunday morning.
Yes, indeed.
And I'm not mourning on this Sunday morning.
I see what you did there.
Yeah,
Thank you. Boy. And then back, I think Mario was on back in May when we spoke about Kiss Live 3, and he's back today. Super Mario Cirillo. How you doing, Mario?
I'm doing okay. Thank you for having me back.
I'm excited to have you back.
Should be interesting.
I think it definitely will be. And we wanted to talk today about the Beatles documentary, which some of you may have heard was released over Thanksgiving weekend. And I guess first thing, let's just set the table here for everybody watching about our Beatles fandom. And Mario, why don't you go first? Talk to us about when did you become a Beatles fan, and are you a super fan, a casual fan? Just give us some background.
I guess a super fan, but it actually Let It Be is what uncorked it for me when I was a kid.
Good word.
Basically, because for some reason, and there are many stories that led up to this, Let It Be was allowed to go out of print. And in the 70s, you could go to any department store and buy it for $1.99 because it was pirated or counterfeited, whatever the proper terminology is. So there I am, I'm in Corvettes. I'm whining that I want to go to the record department, which, by the way, hasn't changed. Corvettes is out of business, but I still want. And there was this copy of Let It Be with the cut edge in the $1.99 bin. And when you're on an allowance, it fit, and I knew 3 songs on it because I was totally hooked on AM radio, and they were playing Let It Be, Get Back, and to a point, The Long and Winding Road. So I wanted to be, an adult. I mean, I'm going to buy a Beatle album that isn't a compilation album because right. I think my sister already had the red album and the blue album, and the popularity of those 2 albums was just, earth-shattering in the 70s. Everyone seemed to have the red and the blue, but thanks to whoever counterfeited the record, anyone was able to buy it, for $1.99. And I also remember it being available in the car wash on 8-track tape.
Wow.
If Vinny is the chemist, I guess I'm the archaeologist. Because this is a real fossil.
So is that an actual copy, or is that also a counterfeit or a bootleg?
I don't know. Your guess is as good as mine. There were so many. There was so many. I mean, every department store. It was an impulse buy at the checkout in the grocery store. Wherever you looked in the 70s, there was a $1.99 knockoff copy of Let It Be. Right. So I bought it. I loved it, and the older kids pointed me in a different direction. Now you got to get Abbey Road. Now you got to get Sergeant Pepper. So I started with their final record, and then holidays and birthdays and allowances and after school jobs, I started putting together my Beatle catalog. So that's how it kind of happened for me.
Right. So obviously you were a fan from, I'll say, the 70s, it sounds like.
Yeah, a second generation Beatle fan. I mean, I'm one of those people that had Red Rose Speedway before I had, Sergeant Pepper.
Okay.
I really enjoyed, the Beatles solo catalog for a long time, and they had a lot of hits. Even Ringo had a lot of hits.
Sure. Absolutely. I think people sometimes forget that, but you're absolutely right.
Yeah, Oh My, the No song, which even sounded kind of kid-like, So I was really drawn to those solo, Ringo songs, and then then I had to get the tap on the shoulder, and by the way, he was a Beatle, that kind of thing. I mean, I was young.
Right, of course.
I was young, so that's how it sort of happened for me.
Interesting.
And I just found them very, very interesting, and the songs were nice. They changed dramatically from I Want to Hold Your Hand up to what we're talking about today,
Right,
Let It Be, and everything that's associated with it. So
absolutely. Now, what about you, Vin? When I obviously we were teenagers in the 80s, and I remember you liking the Beatles, but when did the Beatles come on your radar, and when did you become a fan?
Well, I mean, growing up in a household where, there was always music on and a lot of rock and roll and even, R&B soul music. Of course, I knew of all the Beatles hits, all the popular tunes. I think I remember in the 80s when I really was able to buy records with my own money. I got the Meet the Beatles record. That was the only Beatles record I owned up until like 85, 86, something like that. But I think what ultimately changed, and of course I knew songs like Let It Be, Get Back, Long and Winding Road, Across the Universe, whatever, all the songs. But some of the other songs like Dig a Pony and Two of Us, and I didn't know those songs.
Right.
But what happened was, as you know, when I started getting into writing and recording, somehow I gravitated, or I got a copy of Abbey Road, and I studied that record from top to bottom. I would listen to that on the B train. You remember the B train we used to take
Yep,
on 86th Street and 18th Avenue? And I dissected that record. And to this day, it's my favorite Beatles record. And what I always say, like, and in my studio, there's a picture of the Beatles on the wall. Because I always, when I have somebody in there and I say, well, I recorded this and I did this, I said, it's because of those guys. I always point to the wall,
Yep.
They're like
I know exactly
my
what picture you're
disciples.
talking about. Yep.
They're like my disciples, and without them ever speaking a word to me, they taught me about harmony and chord changes, and also what I learned, I think, the most is the build of a song, where as the song goes along, you start sprinkling in different ingredients, keeps the listener interested in what you're doing. So it was really probably when I was around 19 or 20 is where I really kind of got fully immersed in the Beatles. And then after Abbey Road, I really started to go back and listen to more of the, I want to say, from the Rubber Soul Revolver era forward. Of course, I knew I Want to Hold Your Hand, Twist and Shout. Right. One of the first covers I ever played, and I think it might have been the first show. It was the first show that you saw me play in Cooper Union. We did All My Lovin'. That was when the guitar singer, it was his suggestion. So, that was not even my suggestion. So that was one of the first covers I played and my first show. So that was like a really cool thing. So that was around that time when I really, and then forget it. Now it's just, and I will say I'm not the kind of fan that Mario is. I mean, Mario knows, like, we'll go to a record store. Well, this label was manufactured at this plant and this color ring isn't, like, he knows the pressings. And that's why I love going record shopping with him, because he's so knowledgeable, not only just about Beatles stuff. You could talk about an Elton John record or a Billy Joel record, and really makes the whole experience of listening to music and shopping and the digging for the records that much more fun when you're with somebody who's an expert. So I give my hat to him on that one.
The glorious results of a misspent youth.
Yeah.
So I think it's fair to say then Mario is a super fan. Vin, could I say that you're a super fan as well? I think the answer is yes.
Well, right? Yeah, but I'm definitely a notch under. Like like I said,
Mario's a super fan times 10, maybe you're a super fan times 8. Okay.
Mario would go and I'm speaking for him, but he told me like he would go to I don't know if they were like what were they like kind of like a Kiss convention or like almost like a Beatles thing or a record
Yeah.
and people would have bootlegs, and he was doing that for many years and going around those circles where I never did any of that stuff.
Right.
Yeah. There's a Beatle Fest. They changed the name over the past couple of years. The Convention for Beatle Fans or something like that. And the guy that runs it is anti-bootleg. He hates them. He feels it's taken away from the artist. But Beatle fans want bootlegs. I mean, in the 80s, I mean, that's what we wanted. So there would be people in the flea market, let's call it, in the marketplace, and they would rent rooms up in the hotel. And they would listen to conversations. So I was with my friend Tim, and we were talking to this guy about a bootleg that he had underneath the table. And this guy called us over and said, oh, if you want bootlegs, you got to go to room such and such, tell him Larry sent you, that kind of thing. And we went in there. It was just like crates and crates of I was like, well, a good thing I was older and I was making money because that was it.
Oh, that's funny. That's funny. Well, so clearly, like I said, both of you are super fans. On this panel today, I'm going to be the average fan, right? The casual fan. I've certainly always appreciated what the Beatles meant to music history. I'd be an idiot not to, right? Then when you were talking about, albums that your family owned as a kid or whatever, I don't actually remember my family owning any Beatles albums, which is bizarre. Like I remember them having Rod Stewart albums, Leo Sayer albums, Bee Gee albums, no Beatles albums for any reason. I don't know why. Although they both have an appreciation for the Beatles, but the Beatles albums were never in my parents' collection. The first Beatles related songs that I remember is John Lennon Starting Over when he passed away, and that became a big hit. And then obviously Woman. That's my introduction to Beatles related songs. I can't even remember the first time I heard a Beatles song. It was obviously in the 80s somewhere. But what was the first Beatles song I heard? No idea. No idea at all. To this day, I have, I think, at least one or two Beatles albums in my collection. Lots of songs downloaded, but I don't have like I know you say like the Blue Album, the Red Album. I don't know if I have more than two Beatles albums in my collection, besides just a bunch of songs I've downloaded on iTunes over the years. So again, that's not to say I don't appreciate what they've meant to music, and all the songs I know, I generally speaking like, but they're not my go-to. Like Vinny was saying before, like Abbey Road might be his best album. And I'm like, his favorite album. And I'm like, give me Tobacco Road over Abbey Road is the thought that kind of came to my mind, and again, that's not a knock on the Beatles. It's just, that's my fandom. So, to me, when I heard about this coming out, I'm like, well, it'll be interesting to see this movie, if for no other reason, but because for me, I enjoy watching the creative process. I enjoy watching how songs are written or whatever. And it could be any bands. I mean, literally, it could be J-Lo special and how she's putting together one of her songs. I'm like, well, this is interesting. Let's see what computers they use for these songs, right? So, so just the fact that it was the creative process for me was interesting. Couple that with it is the Beatles and what they mean to music. I'm like, all right, this will be a fun watch, a good watch. Now, I'm curious for you guys. Vin, I know your answer. Mario, did you have Disney Plus before you heard about the Beatles documentary coming out?
No,
or did you buy it because of the Beatles?
I didn't have Disney Plus. I depend on my son to get it for me. And he found a bundle. And it was funny because everything in the bundle is something that we wanted. He wanted ESPN. And I wanted Disney, and Hulu was included.
Sure.
So he downloaded onto his Xbox the special promotion.
Right.
And I said, just make sure that I can access it, because if you download it and leave and go to your friend's house, and I don't know an Xbox from anything else. So thankfully he did it all for me, and it was just. Dad, it's just a button away. I said, all right, that I could do.
Right. And Vin, I know you were the same way. You did not have Disney Plus. I've been harassing you to get it. I'll say for me, I've had Disney Plus for a year and a half, whatever it is now. And I probably would say in my fandom, I'd rather watch Mickey Mouse, or maybe Star Wars, Mickey Mouse, and then the Beatles would have been third on my list. Okay. So it's just that, it happened to be on there. And I probably would have purchased it to watch it anyway. But again, I'm just kind of trying to set the table of what my fandom is. So
Can't wait for the comments. Can't wait.
So,
especially the J-Lo comment, which I let go, by the way.
Yeah. Well, I don't know where that even came from, J-Lo, but you get the point.
Yeah, that's what they always say. Yeah. That's what they always say.
No, you know what? I admit I like pop music, but J-Lo has never been my thing. But whatever.
Yeah.
So Vin, obviously you had to purchase Disney Plus also, and maybe one of these days I'll get you to watch The Mandalorian, but that's okay, whatever.
I like how you put that on the air.
I have to make sure I get that on the air. It's been a year that I've been harassing you, and you're always like, I don't have the time. I'm busy. I'm rehearsing this, that, and the other thing. And then you watch the Beatles for 8 hours over a 3-day period. So,
priorities. I can tell you.
Exactly what I was going to say.
As I said,
priorities.
The disciples. What can I tell you? Boba Fett just doesn't do it for me. I'm sorry.
Fair enough. All right. So we sit down to watch. Release Thanksgiving Day was the first one. Vin, why don't you start? Just you're watching. I mean, I don't even know where to begin with this. It's 8 hours.
I know. So, Dad, you want me to start?
Go.
So where I'm going mentally with this is I've seen Let It Be the movie.
Yes.
Okay. I think, and Mario knows the history of this. I think it was released originally on VHS and then on Laserdisc.
Actually, it was on Betamax.
Well, Betamax, right? Yeah. Oh boy,
here's another
the archaeologist.
Awesome. The archaeologist. That's awesome.
Yeah. So
I need help.
I think it in the early 2000s when I was really getting into like finding everything on eBay that I either had as a child or whatever, and I had heard about the movie. They were circulating this, and I thought at the time that it was a real DVD copy of it. And I mean, the box copy came. They did a really nice job with the packaging and stuff like that. And I was like, oh, this is cool. And then the quality was actually really good, So I was watching it back in the early 2000s, and I must have watched that I don't know, a zillion times. And it was really interesting. If you've seen the original Let It Be, now going into it this way, what we've heard is that the original Let It Be was very dark. It really didn't portray the band so much in a good light. A lot of the turmoil, which you do get to see in the Disney version of whatever you want to call the Peter Jackson version. Mm-hmm. So that was going into it my thing. I was really curious to see. Obviously, I knew there was going to be a lot more footage, and it's like when there's a news story and they don't tell you the first 30 seconds of the story, but you see the 30 seconds after that, and it's really totally taken out of context. So I really wanted to see, like, especially there's that one part with Harrison and McCartney where they have their kind of button heads, and that's like a really famous scene, and he says, I'll do whatever it takes to appease you. I'll play whatever you want, sort of thing. But when I watched it on the Peter Jackson, you saw a little bit more of the dialogue before and after of what transpired there, that to me, it didn't seem as bad as it was from the Let It Be version, although as we come to know, and I'm not a spoiler alert. I hope Harrison leaves the band and just kind of walks out. So that was my thing going in. I was really kind of curious to see, obviously, all the new footage, obviously all of them writing the songs and the particulars and all that stuff, because I love all that stuff, but also comparing it to the original movie.
Yeah, and I'll say this, Vin, I hadn't seen the original movie. I'll be honest about that, right? And I did watch it since I knew we were going to be doing this. And the original movie didn't seem as dark as everybody was portraying it, at least to me. I was waiting for it to be like fisticuffs all over the place. And it was just kind of like that whole George Harrison scene, of course. But I was actually surprised that the original cut wasn't as dark to me as I thought it was going to be, based on what I've heard for 20 years. Everybody's saying how dark of a period it was for the Beatles.
Well, I think the one thing that was criticized about that, and Mario knows this, is that the way it looked. I mean, with modern technology, everything looks so beautiful in the next. Everything looks so vibrant. Even they said about the whole Twickenham Studios, it was cold, it was dark in there. But when you see it, on the Disney version, it doesn't look that way. I mean, Of course, it could look a little sterile or whatnot, don't touch me, I'm sterile. It's. But when I saw the new version, all cleaned up and crystal clear and no flecks of like static or anything,
Yep.
it did. Again, the contrast between the original I thought was pretty evident. That made it seem darker. It wasn't just that scene. It kind of, you could also smell it off the screen. You know what I mean? And so, but.
So Mario, then for you, obviously, I know you must have seen the original cut 1,000 times, probably, right? Did you see it, as most fans do, as a dark version of the Beatles' last days?
It's definitely a snapshot in time, and the time wasn't a very good time for the guys. But if when John died, the 8th Street Playhouse in Manhattan showed Let It Be, and I ran to the city to see it. And I did that because broadcast television wasn't very kind to Let It Be. Broadcast TV would play A Hard Day's Night, and they would play Help, and to a point they would play Yellow Submarine. But Let It Be went from the theaters to relative obscurity.
Right.
And then when he was killed, the VHS came out, and like I said, the 8th Street Playhouse played it. So I saw it on the big screen, and I went in knowing a lot about the movie, but really never seeing it. So everyone was talking about, in the books that I've read, George and Paul are going to have this fight, and it was like 8 seconds. I mean, it wasn't really anything. I mean, if you're in a band situation, there's going to be disagreements, and play it this way, play it that way. But I thought in this film that we've seen over the past several days, that hidden microphone conversation with John and Paul, where they kind of agree. They said, look, when you come to the studio with a song, I wouldn't dare tell you to change the arrangement, because you are who you are. John talking to Paul, and Paul would say the same thing. And he goes, and here we are, ganging up on George for every little thing that he does, and he doesn't. He goes, we have each other, but he has no one. He's his own guy, so he comes to the studio with a song, and it's criticized, so maybe we have to take a step back. So to point out what Vinny was saying, in the context of what we're seeing now, that little 8-second spat was a little bit longer, but at least you had an idea what they were really trying to hone in on, and and talk about. So this is one of the few times where usually less is better, but more is better now, because you get to see the creative process with one of if not one of the greatest, or if not the greatest band in the world, hashing out these songs, and coming up with fragments of songs that would later on become huge. So so there was a lot in this documentary that just blew away some of the things that I went into it thinking this is going to be like Let It Be. I mean, oh my God, this is going to be horrible, but I think they did put a nice light on it for the casual fan, which Mike, I like the opening sequence was about 10 minutes long, but it showed you how we landed in 1969. It says how they got together, and the ups and downs of Beatlemania. 1966 was kind of a difficult time when they stopped touring. So I think what they did with this documentary is, they knew 2 sets of fans were going to watch, the diehards and the casual fans. And I think the opening montage was definitely for the casual fan.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Ben, you first.
No, because I wanted to speak to the one thing, because we're talking about the whole Harrison thing and Lennon McCartney, and talking at a much like basement dweller level of songwriting as what I do compared to the Beatles. You imagine walking in a room with Lennon and McCartney, who've already amassed, I mean, the amount of hits to that point, and the songs that they've written, and you come in with a song or an idea and you're up against these giants in the room. I mean, I don't even know how you even function, I really, seriously, because I'll tell you, when I write or I do something with somebody, I'm quickly to defend anything I do right away, and I'm not Lennon, I'm not McCartney, so I can only imagine what it felt like. And I kind of really related to what Harrison, or what he felt, even though I'm not usually the Harrison, I'm usually the Lennon McCartney of that side, and I've worked with people where they've been the Harrison. So for me, it was really like a little sobering in a way, like, oh, maybe I got to, be a little bit more understanding, or kind of like not be so hard on my idea, or so forceful on like saying it has to be this way or play that, or no, I want that groove, or I think you have to have some of that, and it's really hard. And I used to have it with a friend of mine who we used to collaborate with, and I would demo a song and record all the parts, and then that person would say, but you already did that part, and I've already heard your part, so now I can't go into it with a fresh idea. And I would say, well, in order for me to flesh out the idea, I got to hear it in all of its parts. I got to go through my process. That's my process. That's what Pete Townsend would do when he would listen to the demos of Won't Get Fooled Again. It's him playing the drums, the bass, the guitar, right? He can't play like Entwistle. He can't play like Keith Moon. However, if you listen to his demos, they're damn good.
Right.
He was incredible. First of all, just his engineering and his writing and his playing. But that's how he would do it. And I was kind of like from that same school. So I totally related a lot to that scene. Yeah. Even though I kind of said I wasn't on the Harrison side most of the time. I was on the other side.
It was funny to me, again, hearing how dark Let It Be, the original cut, was. I felt this, I'll say Disney version, that first episode was really like tense to me. Like there was a lot of friction I felt going on between the band. I was like, yeah, I'm getting what. And then when the big moment came that Harrison quit, I'm like, that was it? Like he just, all right, that's it. I'm quitting. When? Yeah. Today. I'm like, what? Well, where's the punches being thrown? Where's like it just almost like took me by surprise. Like that was all of a sudden the moment right there. Even though that whole first episode to me was really tense. And I'm like, they're being pulled 1,000 different ways. Where are they going to be performing? They got to write all these songs in a 2 or 3 week period. There's obviously some friction between John, Paul, and George, but the big moments actually surprised me that it wasn't as dramatic as I thought it was going to be. It was just like all of a sudden George saying, that's it, I quit, I'm out of here.
What was interesting too, I think, of mostly the first part, and I think I even commented to you, I said, does Ringo say more than 4 words in the first,
exactly.
He's basically, most of the time he's quiet.
Yeah.
You don't really hear from him. And then as you see, and I think this was wonderful about the whole 3 parts, is you see how it evolves, the moods, how they change, and and I feel like I'm jumping the gun because I'm just so damn excited right now. But, the moment that Billy Preston comes into it and the way the room lit up, and I've heard those parts on record 1,000 times. And when you hear him put in his thing on there, I was like, holy shit. Like, wow. Like, and you could see, like, they all were like, because you hear them talking at some point about, Nicky Hopkins, the piano player from the Rolling Stones. And if anybody knows about the Rolling Stones, or are interested, they should look to what that guy contributed to that band and how he helped form their sound, But that was like just a wonderful thing to see and hear, how the band actually went from like this to like this, from one guy who was not a Beatle. This is a guy who just came to visit the studio, as far as I remember, right?
Yeah.
They weren't like, let's go hire Billy. I think they talk about him. They mention him or something like that, or they mention him maybe because he was playing with Ray Charles or something like that.
Right? Yeah.
But that to me was like incredible, just to see that whole dynamic, and also the fact that, for me as a tech guy or gear guy, they're wheeling in new pieces of equipment that at the time was like, Fender Rhodes 75 piano. This is like new technology. They're like, all right, we acquired this. All right, what do we do with this? What's the sounds? The sounds hasn't been on the records yet. And now they have this instrument in the studio that Billy goes and sits down and he starts playing. And when you hear like "Don't Let Me Down" and you hear that, those licks he's playing, he's playing in that. And it's like, wow, now you can never hear that song without that. You know what I mean? It's just, so that was like incredible to me.
Mary, I'm curious to hear your point of view. So, I just said that the first episode I thought was a little bit tense, and you could sense that friction. And I agree with you, Vin. As soon as Billy Preston walked in, it was like almost like a whole different vibe. And I felt, at least to me, from my vantage point, it seemed like all of a sudden, and there was the plant conversation had already taken place as well, right? But all of a sudden, I felt like George Harrison was being listened to a lot more, and his opinions were a lot more. And I don't know if it was the plant conversation, if it was Billy coming in, if it was a combination of both. Did you sense that as well, Mario, or am I just misreading this? You're the
No, that's a good point, because it was like the perfect storm, because John and Paul had to have that conversation. And then you have Billy Preston, which I don't even think he uttered more than a sentence in the entire documentary. He just had that infectious smile. And I think he was in awe of them, and they respected the daylights out of him. And like Vinny said, the playing was impeccable. And he added to these songs, which, they were blown away by his talent, And, he's one of the only players that gets a credit on a Beatle record, because if you look at the 45 for Get Back, it says the Beatles and Billy Preston. Okay. They never did that for anybody else. And we all know that Eric Clapton played on the White Album, but, there's never a mention of that. But they were so awestruck with his talent and his great personality, where he lightened everything up, I mean, so I think, his contribution was, immeasurable, because the success, and he's on the roof with them, for God's sake. These are the Beatles.
Maybe you could help me with something here, because as a super fan, maybe you know this. I was wondering, so you brought up before that whole plant conversation, right? The secret conversation they recorded with the microphone in the plant. And I wondered, when did Paul McCartney or John Lennon, if he was still alive, when did they find out that was recorded? Do you have any idea? Like, did McCartney find out as they're doing this? Like, oh crap, that conversation was recorded? Any idea? Because I was wondering about that.
I don't think, I mean, these canisters, these films have been in a vault for 50 plus years. I don't know if Paul was privy to any of that. I mean, maybe, but it was never publicized. Right. He never, the four of them, they did interviews up the wazoo after they broke up, and no one ever got annoyed and said, oh my God, they planted a microphone, and, all of our discussions were being recorded. But I don't think they knew. I mean, there was so much going on. It was a storm of things. You had their management was about to change, and you kind of hear John saying, "Oh yeah, we're going to meet this guy," and Glenn Johns says, "Oh yeah, he's a bit of a con artist," and then they said, "Well, at least we have a con artist on our side. It's usually the other way around."
I remember that. Yeah.
So with all that was going on, I don't think they kind of knew, or maybe didn't even care that conversation took place, to be honest. But it was an eye opener for sure, because it was heart to heart.
Yes.
And I want to piggyback on just what Mario said, just because I was going to get to it, but he mentioned the name Glenn Johns. For me, again, as a fanatic of recording and stuff like that, if people don't know who Glenn Johns is, I mean, this is a guy who's recorded, The Who, Zeppelin. I mean, after this, the Stones. I mean, I'm just looking at his list.
The Eagles.
The Eagles. I mean, this is a giant in the industry. This is a guy who pioneered. If you listen to John Bonham's drum sound, this is a guy who came up with the 3-microphone technique for that. So I'm watching this, and they're saying, oh, Glenn is going to be building this studio. Glenn is putting these pieces together. I'm just like, drooling like this. I'm like, I'm looking at everything, and I loved how much airtime they dedicated to him. And, that whole thing. And even because I was always curious, and this was a thing that, I don't know, it just went over my head. Like, the rooftop recordings were actually used for the record. Somehow that escaped me. Like, you know what I mean? And the fact that they had the wherewithal to say, okay, let's run some cables from the roof. Let's bring them down into the studio. Kind of like the mobile truck thing, like when Eddie Kramer was in the truck recording Kiss Alive, or all concerts that have been done from, a remote unit. But the airtime, seeing the technology, seeing the recorder, seeing the mixing console, and all that stuff, man, that was incredible to me. That was one of my favorite parts of watching this documentary. And I'm gonna set myself up with my own question here. So one of my least favorite parts of watching it, but also was very interesting, was because we've heard for years, Yoko Ono in the studio, what that was like. And you see when Paul's actually like kind of defending, saying, I can't blame him for her wanting to be there. There was no tone of any like, like, why is she here? She's, there was none of that, And we've heard stories since then about what it was like having her there. So my least favorite thing is when she was doing those, whatever she would do, those, oh my God, those are like seconds of my life I'll never get back, pun intended, you know what I mean? And you see like Paul behind the drums, like, he's like wailing on the drums at one point, and she's like, and I'm just like, shit is falling off my walls, you know what I mean? I'm trying to put the pictures back up, but, yeah.
I'm glad you brought that up, Vin, because I was shocked. I think it was right after George Harrison quit and he wasn't back yet. And it was Paul, Ringo, I think Linda was there with them and a few other people sitting around. And you kind of got the sense that people that were there with them were trying to like egg Paul on, like, oh, Yoko's here. And I was waiting for the big, yeah, she's got to go, blah, blah. And instead he's like, no, you know what? John loves her. And if John has a choice between the Beatles and Yoko, he's going to choose Yoko. And we've got to learn to compromise. And I remember that word very vividly. Paul was like, we've got to compromise. And he goes, and the compromise has to start with me first. And I was like, whoa, wow. I didn't expect to hear that. And then Paul goes something along the lines of, 50 years from now, people are going to think the Beatles broke up because of her. And I'm just like, holy crap. Like I thought that conversation to me, that was really wild. So Mary, I'm going to ask you again, like as the super fan, did that surprise you as much as it surprised me?
Hey, listen, for 50 years now, everyone was saying, how Paul was not really complimentary to Yoko. And there was also in one interview, John said, when Paul's singing Get Back to Where You Once Belong, he's staring down Yoko. I thought he was a respectful guy. I mean, it was like his brother was in love with this woman. And what's a brother going to do besides be supportive, So, for all these years, we always thought, she's never more than 2 inches away from John throughout the entire documentary, but they were in love, So, in spite of the horrible singing, I think Paul showed a lot of support. I mean, he could have said, who's this, we're the Beatles. Who is this woman coming in here listening to us write songs, But I didn't get any of that, any of that negativity.
I agree.
So.
And also what I loved watching was those scenes where Linda had her daughter there and the way Paul was with her, which was like, she's like, they're trying to come up with ideas. She's like, grabbing the microphone. She's by Ringo doing that. And they let the kids do whatever they want. It was so nice to see. Like, I would have been like, don't touch that. No, get away from that. I would have fucking had a heart attack. You know what I mean? But they were like, it's just that, picking her up and, carrying her around. You saw there was a genuine love. And I don't know at that point, Mario, maybe like how long was Paul with Linda at that point,
I think it was kind of fresh.
That's what I'm saying.
It was kind of fresh. And also the dynamic between John and the kid was wonderful, So, and he also, in the backdrop of all of this, Yoko had miscarried John's baby. So, for John to be, so loving and caring towards the daughter, I thought was really special. Yeah.
No,
and we never saw any of
I'm glad
that.
you brought that up because to me, one of my favorite moments, it was silly, but the kid, forgive me for not knowing the child's name, was sitting with Ringo and pounce on the snare, and Ringo starts making like all these silly faces, and the kid just goes hysterical laughing. I'm like, what just like a pure innocent moment that here's a kid, and it doesn't matter that that's Ringo Starr and that they're in there with the Beatles. The kid's just there having fun, and the Beatles just ate it up and had fun with them, whether it was John, Ringo, Paul. I thought that was a great moment in the movie. Absolutely.
It was like a bunch of uncles,
Yeah.
So I thought that was really nice.
And I'm glad you brought up Ringo because, again, one of my favorite scenes. Aren't you happy you don't even have to ask the questions? I'll just come up with it.
Go ahead.
One of my favorite scenes is Ringo when he's playing Octopus's Garden on the piano, and we know that's not on that record. And another thing I really learned from watching the full thing, and Mario, I think one of the last times we got together was telling me, oh, yeah, that was part of the Let It Be sessions, wound up on like Maxwell's Silver Hammer. You heard, actually, I heard, what the heck song was it?
There's
oh
a
my
few.
God, help.
There's
Well,
a
I mean,
couple of McCartney songs in
Alpine
there.
Pan was on there.
yeah, but what's the Wing song that he did?
Another Day.
Another
Yeah.
Day, right?
Yeah.
I was like, holy shit! I couldn't
Oh,
believe it. Like,
Darling.
oh yeah, it was like all these great records that I love came out of this great session, But what I was saying about Ringo is that Ringo's like, oh, I'd like to be, and he's playing, you could see, and which is wonderful to see, and I love this because I'm a drummer. It's like, all right, he could play the piano, he knows chords, and then George gets a genuine like interest and comes over to him and says, what do you got? And he says, oh, maybe you should go to an F here or something like that, and. As we know, that just didn't go by the wayside. They eventually went back to that at some point and said, we're going to use this, So just that interaction where, because a lot of it's, with Lennon and McCartney doing a lot of songwriting and kind of, the ideas. But I love that there was at least a spot for Ringo. And I also love to see that as the movie went on, you saw Ringo more. Because most of the time you see Ringo like, in the first part, like he's either hungover, he's either tired or whatever. I mean, I think even one point, Lennon said, I was high last night, or I don't know, I smoked or whatever. I mean, clearly we know what was going on during that period, and it was always interesting to see like Paul always walking like, it clearly he saw like Paul is a very strong personality. He was. Even though I think at one point they said like it was really John who was like the leader, or it's always like John first and then Paul. When I watch that, it's always like Paul is always the guy driving the train, like keeping the ship, and I think we've always heard that Paul was always trying to keep the band together. Mario, maybe you could speak to that whole thing.
Well, there is that. They did have a little conversation in this film when Paul says, "I've been the boss like for 3 years now," and. Prior to that, I guess, maybe John was more of the dominant figure, the dominant force. And even during the little argument with George, he says, you don't want me as the boss. I even scare me,
Yes.
So he made light of it. But think about it. I mean, when Paul gets behind the piano and he's writing Let It Be, does he really need any input from any of the others?
Well, I'm glad you brought that up, Mario.
He's a super talent.
Yeah, that's one of the things to me that I thought was incredible. At least the first time I remember seeing Let It Be in the film, there's all these like side conversations going on. I think like Linda and Yoko were talking over here, the guys and the Beatles are off, and there's John's just sitting at the piano, and you could hear the start of Let It Be start, and while all these other conversations are going on, Paul, right? And Paul's just like, I'm just gonna write like one of the greatest songs of all time while everybody's just chatting away over here, and you could hear him starting to play it on the piano. I'm like, holy crap, that's pretty cool to me.
It's true.
Yeah.
Even a Long and Winding Road. It's him. I really like, and it wasn't in the film. Actually, Let It Be maybe does have to get reissued because there are 3 scenes in Let It Be that aren't in here, and it's Two of Us, The Long and Winding Road, and Let It Be.
Yeah.
If you watch the movie Let It Be, you're going to see those 3 songs in their entirety, and this is 8 hours, and for whatever reason they left.
I don't understand that. Yeah, that at the end I realized it's like, whoa, wait a second. I saw them do Two of Us 5,000 times in this. I saw them do
snippets.
Get Back. Yeah, you know what I mean.
Yeah.
So many times, even on the rooftop, you see they kept repeating the same song. They had 2 or 3 songs, whatever it was. Yeah. And I thought of that. I was like, wait, I know the scene that Mario's talking about from where you actually see them recording. I think was it the final take, Mario?
Yeah, it's Two of Us, Let It Be, and The Long and Winding Road.
Yeah.
You see hints of it, but Let It Be, the film, the proper film, has all 3 in its entirety, which I think.
Yeah. I don't know why they would.
Well, Peter Jackson said there's a 13-hour version.
Oh, good.
Maybe the home video will be that. I don't know.
No, Mary, I'm glad you brought that up because to me that was one of the things that frustrated me with part 3, right? So like you said, I think it was Long and Winding Road. There's a couple of songs where like they flash on the screen. This is the version that appeared on the album.
Yeah.
And then 10 seconds later, it's cut to another
gone.
scene. I'm like, no, I want to see that. I want to see, one of my favorite videos online is Prince doing the song Purple Rain. And he recorded that song for the album live. And there is the full like 13-minute version online. They take it down a lot of times, but if you dig long enough, you can find it. And
I know that was available.
Yeah, and on the video, they're like, this is where the recording on the album started. And then there's like an extra verse in the song, and there's like, this is where the edit is. This is where it picks up, and it goes through the whole 13 minutes. Incredible video. You got to find it. If you like the song, you got to find it. I was expecting to see the same thing. When they said, this is the version that's on the album, I expected to see the whole thing, and then maybe like, oh, there's an overdub over here, whatever it is. But all of a sudden it was cut, and they did it like 3 times in that 3rd episode. I'm like, no, like I kept getting angry every time they did that. So.
Well, it's funny you say that, because every time they would do a version, I'm listening very closely because I know every little nuance of the vocal or the guitar sound. And I was actually literally one of my favorite, and these are not just props here, I was actually sitting in front of the TV like this and playing along. Like, I had my, McCartney had this bass, or Lennon had his Casino guitar. That was part of my experience that I was enjoying, was just like playing along to the record and kind of, learning the tunes as I'm watching the film.
Right.
That's my own personal thing that I got a big kick out of.
Generally speaking, I don't think I've ever met a musician that wasn't, waist deep in Beatles, because a lot of what they're trying to put on record now has already been done, and they did it as pioneers. And it wasn't just recording. I mean, the first stadium tour was the Beatles. The first time a band had their own label was the Beatles. I know they're not the first band ever, but they are the first band that by name. John, Paul, George, and Ringo. I mean, I know there was Bill Haley and the Comets, but I can't name a Comet.
No disrespect for those Comets if they're still alive.
No disrespect. But they all kind of like, those years, those formative years, they did things that, just weren't done in the past, So, so the recording and everything about them was just, just groundbreaking.
And let's not forget, how many times, if you had a nickel for every time you heard a musician say, the first time I saw the Beatles on Ed Sullivan was, I'd be $5 richer. You know what I mean? If every time, at least I've heard it on them.
Of course.
But, how influential they were. And even like, as we are huge Kiss fans, I mean, think about, even Kiss, I mean, how they kind of, whether it was a coin, modeled those guys. The same thing. They wanted them to be 4 identifiable characters.
Absolutely.
Merchandising. The Beatles did a lot of merchandising, right? Yeah. So
you could buy a Beatle wig in the '60s.
Yeah.
Coloring books and all that stuff. They had them. They just Gene perfected it.
Yeah.
That's true. Vin, so you were talking about the different versions of the songs, and if I can, that's one of the, I'll say, criticisms I had about the film, is that, I like that they put in the bottom right-hand corner, I think, the name of the song, or sometimes the bottom left-hand corner, the name of the song and the songwriters. I thought that was fine or whatever. But 2 things. I wish, number one, that they would have put what the final album was that the song appeared on, because again, not being a diehard, I was like, I don't know if this song's on Let It Be. Let me look it up. Oh no, that one's on Abbey Road. Oh no, is this a Beatles song? Oh no, that was a Paul McCartney song. So I found myself Googling a lot during the movie, because I was like, I wasn't positive. I was like, I don't remember this one being on Let It Be. Let me go look, And then that's how I noticed, wait, no, somebody's a Paul McCartney songs after the Beatles broke up. So I kind of wish for that. And then number 2, I wish, because I know there's the deluxe edition Let It Be out right now, and it says like Long and Winding Road, take 17 or whatever it says. I wish that when they were showing the film that they would say that this was take 9 or take 12 or whatever it may be, because I knew as you're watching this that this was a lot of times not the final version, but that curiosity got to me. Like, is this the 3rd time they're trying it, the 10th time? Like, sometimes I lost that point of reference a little bit. And I wish, since they were putting it up on the screen anyway, what did it take to say, this is Let It Be, take 6 or whatever it is,
But think about it. Look what they led you to do.
Sure.
now, so now you're becoming more well versed, even though you're a casual fan. But you were compelled to go Google some of this stuff. Maybe that was the point of the whole thing, to get some new fans, under the tent.
Yeah,
Interesting.
yeah, yeah,
Interesting.
yeah. The thing about them working on the songs that I found also incredibly interesting, and I knew this, of course, was how, oh, John's playing the bass now. He's playing the Fender six-string bass.
Yeah.
Oh, now George is playing that, and John's holding this instrument. Now John's at the piano. Oh, it's like they all kind of like were interested in not just playing their main instrument. They were picking up other instruments that were in the room
Yeah.
and trying to contribute.
Yeah.
Which was, again, me as a fan of recording and writing and stuff like that. And these are my heroes. I was really loving that part of it, just seeing, actually who was on what. A lot of it I knew, but now it's like obviously I had all the more footage of seeing all this stuff, which was great.
Yeah. Yeah.
Even that part where, I'm sorry, Mary. Even that part, I know. They're gonna say he's out of control on this one. Even the part where I mentioned about Ringo playing, I like the beat. He's playing, and there's that one part where Paul's playing this piano and boogie woogie type, and then Ringo's on the other end. He's like, use both hands, and I was like, I didn't even know Ringo could play that well. You know what I mean? I had no idea. He just wasn't hitting one note like this.
Right.
He
Right.
actually had some fundamentals of playing piano,
Yeah.
which was a wonderful scene, seeing
It
Paul.
makes
and
me
Ringo.
happy to hear you say you didn't know that, because I was like, I didn't even know Ringo could play piano. So,
Yeah.
that's again being the casual. So I was like, oh, that's kind of cool. Not only could he play, but he seems like he could play pretty decent.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mary,
Talented
were you going
guy.
to say something before we cut you off?
Yeah, I cut him
No.
off.
It's to Vinny's point, when they were doing Octopus's Garden, I really, George really wanted to help, and they would go on to write songs on the Ringo album and in the 70s and everything. But maybe John and Paul, I don't know if they ever really helped the way George. I mean, you could see the concern in his face. I have to get this chord. We have to get from this verse to the bridge. I mean, and I just thought that was very telling of the size of George's character.
Yeah.
And they also played other songs. Martha My Dear shows up. That's from the White Album.
White Album.
One moment that I really enjoyed was Paul starting to play Strawberry Fields, and John's in the room. If that isn't brotherhood, I don't know what is. Because he just starts playing it. It's a John song. Paul probably had very little to do with it, and he's playing it to I think his best friend. And I thought that kind of took the edge off of some of the stuff. We would almost prejudiced, going into this. If Let It Be was dreary over 80 minutes, or this is going to be 8 hours. How dreary is this going to be? But it wasn't. It was fascinating to see the song process being carried out. It was fascinating to see the interaction between them, whether it was a little bit of an argument or not. But when they nail it, you could tell, you could see the look in their face when they nailed the song.
I think, Mary, to me, you're saying fascinating seeing the song, coming together in that first episode again, where to me there was a lot of tension going on, and they're like, oh, we're waiting for John. John's late yet again, and Paul's like, I'm just going to pick up guitar. I'm going to keep myself busy. And all of a sudden, within minutes, you got the main riff of Get Back. I'm just like, holy crap! Well, I kept thinking as I'm watching the scene, what if John was on time? That song might not exist.
Yeah.
So,
And I'm sure Vinny noticed this, playing the bass like a guitar. He was strumming down, getting the genesis of that song was just. There was so many moments in this documentary, just mind blowing, and I like the fact, and I know that I've enjoyed documentaries of other bands as well, especially the Kiss one on A&E. But I like the fact that he let it breathe. He didn't have voiceovers. He didn't have current interviews with McCartney and Ringo.
Mm.
He just, he took him a long time to do this, but the patience that he must have had to just, footnoting here and there who the players are, but allowing the film to be its own, almost like a reality show, have it go. There was an ebb and flow throughout the entire documentary, and we weren't once interrupted by a voiceover thinking that we're sitting in the idiot section, or it's 1969, these are the guys, this is what's happening, blah blah blah. So I think, just based on that, it was a completely different kind of experience, as the usual documentary can sometimes be.
And not only that, you got to learn about who the press secretary was, who the receptionist was. That was like wonderful. Like everybody was like, and you see something like, was it Mal Evans?
Mal Evans.
How he, the Beatles handlers, like he's a guy, like they're coming up with lyrical ideas and he's writing them down. You don't see Paul like with a pen, like, you could say, oh, no, like, like he's coming up with ideas. He's not, and here's a guy like this. Remember, I'm watching no computers. There's no word processor. You'll see typewritten pages, but they must have wrote it down. But the whole process back then, without technology, them coming up with ideas, and and then they're pouring champagne for them. They're giving them their tea. They're giving them their sandwiches. You know what I mean? I love that whole thing. Yeah, like all these other people who were, obviously, I'm thinking, man, I would have been happy to be the secretary. I would just to be involved. And the other thing I was watching is like, is there any security in this place? Like people just, you just see like they just walk in like Apple's. I'm like, this is freaking like Apple. Harrison's pulling up in his Mercedes, like,
and there was like two people standing right on the side over there, just watching them walk in. And first of all, I'm like, why is there only two people? Where's like, fans would know. But then number two, how are they being allowed to stand that close as these guys are just walking right in? I was
just goes to show you your paparazzi TMZ days, right? Right? I mean, this is incredible just to see. You don't see George with a key opening the door. You don't see him knock on the door. He just opens the door. Right. Like anybody could walk in. You know what I mean? I'm like, damn, I missed out on an opportunity to be a stalker.
Oh man, that's hilarious.
But that whole thing of just showing all the different people who were involved in the team that they had was just, so much fun to watch. And I think one other thing, we were just talking about the camaraderie, or just how John and Paul, they're like brothers. One of my favorite things, and I know you probably thinking the same thing, where they're singing. I forgot what song. They're like, and they're singing the whole song.
The mouth's barely even moving.
And John's got this face like he's possessed. I was like laughing, like it's like, and they did the whole thing. And then even afterwards, I think they're still talking like this, like they went through the whole song like that, just being goofy. You know what I mean? It was just like. So again, taking away from, they hated each other, they this and that, they weren't getting along. To me, you just see like, obviously there was a process, or, they had, more of a dark period at the start of this, but as it gradually went on, you just saw it kind of dissipate and go away to even the performance when on the rooftop, you know?
Yeah. I thought this as I'm watching, this did not look like a band that was on the verge of a breakup to me.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe the first part, I was like, ooh, yeah, there's a lot of tension here. But like you just said, Ben, as we moved into the second and third parts, this just seemed like a bunch of guys who were having a lot of fun. And I almost chalked up some of that tension in the first part to them being pulled 1,000 different directions from all the different people that are working with them. It's like, I wanted, like, if I was Paul McCartney or John Lennon, I might have been like, the rest of you guys, get the hell out of here. We're the band. We got a lot of songs we got to write. We got to record. Get out of here. I don't care where this concert's going to be. I don't care about this and that. We're going to just get to business. Because I felt like, with the exception of George, at least from my perception, there was that camaraderie. And just John Lennon was late every day. And it wasn't like McCartney was getting in his face saying, what are you not here at 11 o'clock for? What are you doing? It was just kind of like he showed up. I was like, come on, let's get to work.
And I love the one day that Ringo was the only one who showed up. Like Ringo was like, like this guy who's like, looks like he's in worse shape. Like he's not ready for anything, and he's there. He's the only one there, which is that was classic.
Speaking of Ringo, though, I did feel bad. At one point when Lennon hadn't shown up and Harrison had quit, and Paul is talking about still the show. Well, we could do it on TV, and maybe we'll just interject like news things from around the world. We'll play a couple songs and we'll do a news thing. And then Paul goes, and the last news thing will be the Beatles break up. And I just felt like Ringo, just like he like puts his head back, like, oh no. Like I felt bad for him in that moment. Like as quiet as he was, his body language there said so much to me. Like I felt like he almost like was heartbroken when he heard Paul saying, and the last news thing will be the Beatles break up.
Yeah. And I think there was another poignant moment when Paul just kind of stares out into nowhere and says, and then there were two.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And
it just happens to be the same two that are only alive right now, which was eerie to me.
Very eerie. Yeah.
Yeah, and the other thing that was you hear early on, I don't know who said it, I don't remember who it was, but he's like, well, wouldn't it be like cool, like if the cops came in and like arrested us or something like that, and not even knowing that they were going to go on the roof, and then and even that the cops are like hanging out in the hall. I'm like, why are they not just going up there? Like they're cops. I'm thinking like they're like waiting. Could somebody let us up to the roof? These are fake guns. We can't actually. I'm like thinking like they were like I was just wondering what was taking them. I was happy they were staying down there because I wanted them to play longer and longer.
Me too.
But that was the whole thing was like fascinating. Like they're like, and then you see like the chief of police come out of the car. It's like, all right, now some shit's gonna go down. You know what I mean? Like
the general.
But the general. Yeah.
So let me ask you guys then, because that was something that was, I'll say, new to me. Of course, I knew the police came and broke up the concert, but I assumed that the Beatles had been playing for, I'll make it up, a half hour. The police showed up and 5 minutes later it was over. I was stunned, like you said, and the police were kind of like there at the second song, maybe third, right, of the performance. And then they were downstairs in the lobby for a half hour. I was stunned. Was that a new revelation for Beatles fans, or did you guys always know that the police were there for a long time?
I didn't know they were there for a long time. And if you're basing it solely on Let It Be, I think the rooftop concert is 20 minutes or so.
Right.
And they're on their way, but you had no idea that they stalled that long to get a couple of more stripes on his shoulder, to actually have the balls to go up there and say something. But they really let them play, and you get an extra version of Get Back. And I didn't want it, obviously I didn't want them to interfere. I thought maybe they play some more songs that they've been working on, or maybe an oldie, maybe a prior hit.
The thing and about Get Back, and I debate this a lot of times when I'm writing with somebody, whatever. The song is basically two chords. It's one of the greatest songs that was written, and it's two chords. And a lot of times when I'm writing a song, I think it needs another chord, or I think it needs a bridge. I think and it just goes to show you. And I'll say this when I'm writing with it, like Free Falling is another song that I'll always say is basically it's the same three chords that repeat, or same two chords that repeat over. And what he sings in the verse and when he sings in the chorus is over the same chord structure, but it doesn't sound the same melody wise. Great melody is great melody. And harmony. You could do it over one chord. You could do it over two chords. It doesn't have to be an opus. You know what I mean?
Right.
It doesn't have to be a Bohemian Rhapsody. Bohemian Rhapsody is an incredible tune. I'm not putting that song down by comparison, but there's a stark difference between structurally Get Back and Bohemian Rhapsody. So that to me, when I'm watching it, also, I'm thinking about what they're doing in the process of writing the song and waiting to see them say, do we need another part here? Should we go somewhere else? And there's parts of where they're writing a song and they're trying to find the. I'm like, no, there it is, and they skip past it. No, you had it right there, but then they would find it, because as we come to know. But you could see where even one point Harrison's trying to find, a chord or something like that. I love seeing all that stuff. I think that's.
I wish there was actually a little bit more of that. To me, one of the things I'll criticize, and you guys probably love this. There's a lot of, I'll say, cover tune performances embedded throughout there, and they were usually pretty short and quick. But I was like, I want to see a little bit more of how Let It Be came. Like at one point, you see, like I said before, Paul at the piano playing it. Next thing, the band's all together rehearsing it, and it was just like, how did that happen? How did that transition? I wanted to see more of that. There's a lot of it in the movie, right? I mean, there's 8 hours, but I actually wanted to see more. I would have done away with some of those like cover jams that they were doing and given me more of the songwriting.
I think why they had a lot of, I think it's important for the story because I think those covers were kind of bonding them together. These are songs that they were highly influential, whether it was a, a Chuck Berry song or an Elvis tune or Little Richard. This, if you listen to any interviews with the Beatles and say what inspired them to do music, just like, Kiss and other bands would say the Beatles, they said, like I just said, the artists that were their inspiration. And I think for them, like when there were moments of maybe uncertainty, they would start going into a cover because it was a feel-good moment for them, something that they bonded as musicians. I get your point of what you're saying. Like, me too. I would have liked to have seen more of the nuts and bolts to some of the stuff. And maybe, because I think they said, like, there's certain things where there was only audio footage of, and they would just, which they did a great job of that. I mean, for the most part, you saw or heard stuff in sync, audio and video. There wasn't a lot of where there was just like still images or whatever, and you just heard like them doing a demo of whatever.
Well, let me say this, Vin. Think about it. At the start, they said there was like 60 hours of video. This was long, and it was 8 hours. That means what? 85% of the video is still on the cutting room floor.
And Mario doesn't sleep well at night because of that, right?
I gotta see it all.
Would you want all 60 hours, Mario?
Well, it's funny, John, when they walk, John wasn't really too pleasant to some of the interviews after this. He said, we turned over 60 hours of the most poorly recorded garbage that we ever did. And, Phil Spector made an album out of it that didn't make me puke, or something like that. He was really negative about all of this. And he even said, he goes, I can't even imagine even the biggest Beatle fan wanting to sit through all 60 hours.
Wow. Minus Mario Cirillo.
Yeah. I never get a chance to introduce myself to him.
Yeah, but the thing is, Mario, we had a conversation recently, and that's another thing I found interesting. I think worth noting. All right, so give a little bit of the history, because George Martin was pretty silent during this whole thing, and we all know that George Martin was their producer, and I think I remember you telling me that they wanted to go in the direction of having not having Martin really be a part of this record, and then he said the only way he would agree to come back and do Abbey Road is if you do the records the way we used to do it. So just give a little bit of this, because the reason why I'm bringing this up because you brought up Phil Spector. So just give a little bit of that of the history that was involved there.
Yeah, it was Paul. Paul. When they realized that Let It Be wasn't really like their great record that they thought it was going to be, and then you see 8 hours that really is 60 hours of George Martin really taking a back seat, and there were times there were close-ups of him where he's really not enjoying this entire process, because this is a man who through album 1 through album 12, he was the guy, and he took their ideas and made them happen. Mm-hmm. And John wanted the album to go out without any overdubs. The Glyn Johns record is what they refer to most of the time. It's this record right
archaeologist.
There it goes. Yeah.
This record right here. All right, so this picture is them, at that time in 1969, and their first album was Please Please Me, and it's the same pose, only they're very young, So John was like, put the album out like this and let the world see what happened to us. We turned into this, this horrible sounding band. And, they dialed that back and said, John, do you really want to leave the world like that? So Paul goes up to George Martin and goes, let's do another album, and let's do it the way we used to do it. And his exact words were, if you allow me to. And of course, we all know we got Abbey Road, after that conversation. And side 1, was to appease John, which is individual songs. And side 2 was to appease Paul, who was really into production, So you got that beautiful, Abbey Road medley on side 2, that was to make Paul happy. And so, I'm glad, everyone kind of criticizes the Phil Spector Let It Be, but in this documentary, Paul says that, Long and Winding Road needs strings. And, they provide, Phil Spector provided the string version of that song. And then you hear, years later, maybe even 10, 20 years later, I was never happy with Phil Spector's strings and choirs and all these things in the background. So I think, that might have been a little bit of revisionist history on Paul's part, that, he was dead set against strings when, on the film, he's asking for the strings. So I think it kind of ended the way it was supposed to end, Abbey Road is a tremendous record. And then this album came out afterwards, to support the movie. So.
And the thing too, another thing to mention about Abbey Road, and I know that this movie is a kind of about Abbey Road, because again we see so many songs, again something, you see George singing melodies to something, and he's not singing something; it's something totally different. And I was like, whoa,
yeah.
And think about
let me just pause you. I thought that was cool because you see John and Paul also come in and start trying to help with some of the lyrics, right? Because he's looking for some of the right words in the song. And that scene to me was another one that felt a little too short to me. It was only like a minute and a half or so, I'm going to say roughly from top of my memory. And I was like, I wanted to see more of that.
And there's no way it was just a minute and a half of that went on. They weren't like, okay, that's good. Let's go. Can I get more of that tea?
And that's one of the things that I wondered, right? So whether it's something, or you guys mentioned before, Octopus Garden, right? They're shorter scenes, I think, in the third part, if I remember right. And then that's it. They're abandoned for the rest of the documentary. And I'm like, how did the guys come back to those songs? How did they, because those are two classic songs.
Sure.
And they weren't watching these films. They weren't going back and saying, hey, so where did the memory come from to say, hey, let's go back to that thing that we were doing, Ringo and George on the piano, that octopus song. Yeah. Let's try to, how did that come about? I kind of left myself wanting to know more about that. And there's only so much you can put in an 8-hour film, but I wanted to know more.
And especially when talking about Abbey Road, two of the greatest Beatles songs is, from that album, to me, is Something and Here Comes the Sun, which is written by Harrison, you know what I mean? And I think Frank Sinatra was quoted saying, like, when he went to perform Something, it is the greatest song written by Lennon and McCartney. He didn't even have it right. He thought it was a Lennon and McCartney song, and it was written by Harrison,
Yeah. No one was going to correct Frank.
No.
I want to stick with Harrison for another moment, because I'm sure you guys had to pick up on this. I thought it was a cool moment when you see George Harrison in the film say to, I think it was John Lennon, hey, I think I got a lot of songs. You guys are kind of declining. I want to put out my own solo album, right? And I was like, well, that's kind of interesting that they have that moment on film, because we know what happened, right?
I think I have his somewhere close by here. Do I? Yeah, I do.
And one of the finest Beatles solo albums is the George Harrison "All Things Must Pass." There it is.
There it is.
And you hear him, I think singing part of "All Things Must Pass," right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
So that was even back then. He had this genesis of used Mario's word. I know he requires fees to use his language and stuff like that, but I'm willing to pay him to use that word genesis. But yeah, the genesis, the nucleus, or whatever you want to call it, right, of that great album, the great song,
Yeah, but now to Mike's point, there's precious few film footage of Abbey Road being assembled. Whenever you see other documentaries about the Beatles, they'll show still photography, and they'll play some of the songs in the background. But, you don't see them the way you see them during these sessions, that creative process, if that was ever committed to film, I guess, that would be tremendous, Even the White Album has a little bit, there's really not too much footage of them during the creative process. That's why this, even though it's not perfect, it's far from perfect, but it is the Beatles in action, writing songs, whether they're great songs or it's not so great songs. It's still a treat to watch,
Well, and to the point of what we're trying to make about the amount of hours, we're three tremendous Kiss fans. Imagine if there was 2 hours of them recording any solo, any record from the 70s, like Rock and Roll Over, Dress to Kill. We've never seen them. There, as far as we know, there's nothing that exists of them actually recording a record from the 70s or maybe even the 80s. I don't know. You know, I think there was some stuff from the Carnival Soul sessions that was out, but and maybe from Sonic Boom or something like that. I think with Monster, you know, later on. But man, what would you pay to see an hour of footage of them recording the first Kiss album, or you know, I mean, that would be. And here we got 60 hours of footage, you know.
If I remember right, with Kiss, there's a photo of them during the Rock and Roll Over sessions, and on top of the console is a black and white TV. And I think they were using, if I remember right, to feed in Peter Criss's drums. They was recording in a separate room. But I've always seen that picture and said, oh, is there a video somewhere? Is there a video? And I did think of that a few times while I'm watching this, because I'll be honest, at times the movie left me wanting more. And at other times I felt like it was too long. Like, all right, it's 8 hours. Enough is enough. You know, again, as a casual fan. Right. But then I kept saying, well, you know, but as a diehard Beatle fan, you've got to be sitting there with a friggin' bib on, drooling. It's just like, this has got to be a dream come true. And you know, we've mentioned a few of the moments, and you know, one of the things also that kind of took me by surprise. I've obviously always known about the rooftop performance, but I enjoyed even seeing in the film that I think it was the day before, where they were like taking a vote, like should we go up on the roof tomorrow? And I'm like, wow, even the day before they weren't sure if they were going to. And if I'm remembering it right, I think George Harrison's like, no, I don't want to. And I'm like, what? Are you freaking crazy? This is like, you know, even the day before they weren't sure, and there was some no votes. I'm like, wow, that's pretty freaking incredible, if you ask me. Yeah. Yeah.
I think in episode 3, there's a footnote of even 5 minutes before the Beatles are on, you know, they're on the level right below the roof, and they're still discussing whether or not they should do it. I found that unbelievable. You know, they had so many other ideas. You know, North Africa, they were going to do. You know, on a cruise ship, literally. Believe it or not, right? They wanted to do it on a cruise ship.
Yeah, and I think Paul was the one that's like, playing on a boat, that's crazy. Who would play on a boat? And I'm like, oh, well,
and now
50 years from now, I'll be on cruises all the time. But I did pick up on that comment. You know?
Yeah.
I thought of you immediately when he said, who's gonna go on a cruise ship?
I picked up on that also. You know, one of the things I learned, and again, maybe you guys knew this, but when they did Dig a Pony up on the roof, and somebody was holding the lyrics up for John to read off of. I was like, I'd never noticed that before. I don't know if that was not shown in the previous cuts.
The first teleprompter, human teleprompter. You know, exactly. The poor young kid, like, exactly. Whatever you like, Mr. Lennon.
Poor Mal Evans. I mean, that guy did everything for them.
Incredible.
I love at the end of every day, there's this goodbye scene, like see you tomorrow. Yep. And one of them was funny. They were doing Maxwell's Silver Hammer. And he goes, Mal, we're going to need an anvil and a hammer.
Yeah. And he had it, you know.
Next day, it's there.
And that's in the record. Yeah. And also what I enjoyed too, I'm a huge Peter Sellers fan, you know. I love the Pink Panther. And and I knew that Peter Sellers had a relationship with Ringo and in the films and stuff like that. And they had like that footage of Peter Sellers coming in. I'm like, there's Inspector Clouseau, you know, and you see him like all like with the glasses all, you know, like so as a Peter Sellers fan, that was enjoyable also to watch like these other characters or actors, whoever were coming in, you know, to the studio, you know.
You know, the Magic Christian was going to be filmed at Twickenham, and you know, even no matter how overtime, you know, Let It Be went, Ringo was going to have to stick around and be in that movie. So he spent more time at Twickenham than he probably cared to do. Yeah. Nobody liked it. You know, nobody liked Twickenham because it was just like this big cavernous studio, and it was, apparently it was freezing. They're all wearing, you know, some sort of jacket, you know, even inside.
Furs.
You know?
Everybody's wearing so two things. Number one, everybody's wearing furs, and I'm surprised I didn't get cancer watching this with how much these guys all smoked.
Yeah.
Like,
oh my God.
Holy
wow. Totally different time.
Yeah, totally. That's one of the things I think. So Vin, I'm curious because we didn't talk at all before recording this about the details. But after the first, I think we spoke Friday morning, right after Thanksgiving, and you were like, "Oh, did you watch it? What did you think?" And I'm like, "Not telling you, not telling you." And you said to me, so I'm curious what you were thinking. I think I know something you don't like about it. And I didn't ask you what it was because I didn't want to know. I wanted to save it for when we were recording. So, but you've had my curiosity for the last couple of days. What is it you think I didn't like about it?
Well,
At least part one.
you kind of said about it. Well, I just felt like you were like, okay, all right, enough. I want to get to the next. Like, I thought as a non-Beatle fanatic, it might have felt a little long to you. Like, you kind of wanted them to get from here to there a little bit quicker.
Okay.
And I felt it even more when I watched part two because that was the longest part. That not for me. I was just saying for you. I thought maybe, and you kind of again you alluded to it. There were points where you were like, maybe was feeling a little long on your end, watching it. Whereas Mario was like, it's not long enough,
right.
You know what I mean, myself,
Right.
So that's what I was thinking in my head. Because I'm watching it, I'm like, what I don't see as filler, you may see as filler. You know what I mean? I know you're really into like seeing conversations and hearing the nuts and bolts, but when they were doing the cover tunes and stuff like that, to your point, I think I was just like, I was probably like, these are not even songs I like. You know what I mean? First and foremost, I don't care. No disrespect to Chuck Berry, Elvis Presley, Little Richard. You have no connection to those type of things, and that's kind of what I was thinking. So, am I off base in that?
No, I think that's fair. But so let me ask you, because I think my favorite part of the three actually was part two. And that's because you did start to see some of the songwriting coming together, some of the recordings coming together. So even though it was the longest, I actually enjoyed part two the most. I thought the whole like build up to George coming back, I thought was interesting. Just seeing the difference in the dynamic between part one and how they felt, and then part two, Billy Preston coming in. Part two to me was the one that I enjoyed the most, and I actually enjoyed all three parts more than I thought I would. But part two was my favorite. What about you guys? Did you have a favorite part, or was it just the whole thing? Mary, I think you probably enjoyed all 8 hours, but did you have a favorite part?
He's so in for part four. Remember,
Right.
he woke up this morning. He's like, on the Xbox, how do I put this thing on again? One button. It's one button.
I was Beatle drunk this morning. Where's part four?
That's right.
Yeah.
There's one. I mean, there's a ton of moments, but there was one particular one that I thought the editing was just brilliant. When John starts singing rock and roll music, and they cut to the Beatles singing rock and roll music on the '66 tour. And they kept toggling back and forth, John in 1969, John in 1966. And to me, maybe that was more for the casual fan, but they didn't have enough rock and roll music. It wasn't long enough in 1969. So, brilliantly, he found now in 1966, that was the opening number of the tour, was rock and roll music. So they had plenty of footage of that, but they went to the color version of that, and they kept toggling back and forth, and I thought that was great. It's a great song. It's Chuck Berry. It's part of their history that they love that kind of music, and you could tell John was like loving every minute of it, and in '69 and '66. So I thought that was a good marriage of moments.
And I love, like, they were like, at one point they're talking about Billy Preston. He's like, oh, he's way better on the organ than Ray Charles. You know what I mean? Like, Ray Charles is like a giant, a pioneer once again in writing music and performance. And I don't think they were trying to put down Ray Charles. You know what I mean? No. But of course, they wouldn't be disrespectful. But that's how much they thought about Billy Preston. I took it more as a compliment
to Billy than a
exactly. Yeah.
And remember, Billy Preston was with them in Hamburg, Germany. So he said, many times that he used to just stand on the side of the stage and watch these guys, work like 8 hours a night. I mean, it was just ridiculous.
Think about that.
Yeah. I mean, you're a performing artist, Vin. I mean, can you do 8 hours a night? I mean, it's just.
I don't even get 8 hours of sleep. How can I perform for 8 hours? I mean, come on. Jesus,
So, Vin, did you have a favorite?
But I don't think. Well, I don't think. But I don't think Mario said what his favorite part was.
No, he didn't. He didn't.
Yeah.
So ask you, and then I was going to circle back to him.
Yeah.
Give him a little bit more time to marinate a little bit.
Do you need more marination? What do you think?
There's so many moments, but I when George left, the three of them had that group hug. So maybe my favorite moment wasn't a music moment, more of a human moment. Because when George left, there's John, there's Paul, and there's Ringo, and they just hug each other. And the camera kind of stays.
That was the end of the first episode.
The
right?
end of the end of the first episode. And you could tell it was more than just musicians.
Right.
They know each other for a long, long time.
Yeah, I didn't think they were playing for the camera throughout the whole thing. That was another thing I noticed. The cameras were there. I didn't think they were actually trying to be something other. I mean, because obviously you saw the moments that were a little rougher to watch. And they were trying to sugarcoat it. But Mario still hasn't said what part is his favorite. He's talking about scenes. Mario, which episode is your favorite?
You have to say one word. 1, 2, or 3.
2.
There you go.
I like 2 because actually I was kind of disappointed with 3. If I could start talking about that.
Yeah, I was going to ask you what were you disappointed. So go ahead.
There were 5 cameras on the roof, and the only thing I'm a very simple Beatle fan to make happy. All I wanted was from beginning to end, just on the roof. But they went down to the downstairs. They talked to the fans. They talked to the cops. They talked to this and that. It would have been nice. And I think when the Rolling Stones release DVDs, you're allowed to select the camera angle or whatever. I hope if this makes it to home video, and I'm sure it will, you get to choose, which one of those 5 cameras do you want, and I just want to see that upstairs on the roof from beginning to end. So I kind of was a little disappointed that it was just, at some point there was 3 screens. Yeah. 3 screens, upstairs, downstairs, and the cops.
So let me say something before you do as the casual fan here. That actually, I loved the way they edited that. Okay, because first off, I loved when they were performing, and at times, like you said, there was like 3 screens at once. You saw different angles, but I loved when they were cutting down during the performance to the offices in the hallway, the fans out in the street, because it gave me, as the casual fan, the feeling of like, what was it like on that day where the biggest band of all time is up on the roof? Nobody knew this was going to happen. What was that like? I kept trying to envision, what would that be like if that happened today, where all of a sudden, some band just appeared up on the roof? What would that feeling be like? So I could understand as a diehard that you just want to see the performance. I totally, if this was Kiss and they were doing that, I'd be like, shut up, people, I don't want to hear you. I want to see this performance in 1975 or whatever. But as a casual fan, I'm like, this is really cool to kind of really get the sense and the feeling of what that was during that day. So, and that's, I think, was what's great about us doing this, is you're getting the diehard perspective, which I totally get what you're saying. But for me as a casual, I'm like, I love how they did that. So now, Vin, I'll let you interject. I had to say that as the casual fan.
Well, I agree with Mario, and I want to see the whole performance. However, I think it was essential for them to film it that way or to present it that way, because that tells the story. Because, they're up on the roof. Nobody knows that they're going to do it. They don't even know if they're going to do it. All of a sudden, you see people going like this. What the fuck is that? You know what I mean? Yeah. And then, like, do you know who that is? Well, it's the Beatles. Oh, one girl goes, I could tell that's Paul's voice.
Yes, yeah.
And I'm also thinking, like, okay, modern day equipment. I know PA systems. They got these Fender speakers, like, hanging. This was not, like, I mean, it was top technology at the time, but this was not like what you see in arenas. Right. They got Fender twin amps. They're like 23 watts or 27 watts amps, whatever they are. They're loud, but how loud are they from a rooftop? Right. It's like, what did it actually really sound like? And there was points where you were down below where you kind of heard, and you know what that sound is like when you leave a concert and you hear it in the distance. It's kind of what it's like, you know what I mean? So I think it was really, really well done the way they did it with the 3 screens, and I think they had to do that. So
yeah. Well, truth be told, I have the same complaint over the Let It Be movie. When they cut to downstairs, I'm like, it's the freaking Beatles up there, please. I want a steady camera. I want to see it from beginning to end.
Yeah.
I loved seeing Paul McCartney's reaction when the police showed up on the roof, and he actually seems like excited that they're there, because I think it was part 2 when they're talking about like, where should they do this performance? And I think it was Paul's like, it should be something dangerous. It should be, and they're kind of going, and I guess unknowingly, because I don't know if they expected the cops to show up, they got exactly what they wanted. They got a dangerous thing where, oh, this one's going to be arrested. And you can just see Paul like looking over his shoulder like, yeah, the cops are here. This is cool.
and they never like pulled the plug or never shut their amps down. They kind of, I mean, I think it would have gotten to that point, but it was kind of cool to see like they ended it the way they wanted it when they wanted it, you know, and that was it.
Yeah, I think George Harrison got unplugged at some point. I don't know by who or if it just happened.
Yeah,
and he walks over and he plugs himself right back in.
Yeah. Or you see Mal in the back of the amps. He was flicking them back on. I don't know what happened there. But
Mal Evans gets all the good jobs, you know. Oh, by the way, the police are here, you know, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So Vin,
and I wish they would have also said, because you see it, Lennon's like, my hands are freezing. Like, I want to know what the temperature was. Obviously, it's cold. You see, you know, Lennon with his big, like, fur, and you know, and George Harrison's got this, what the wildebeest coat on or whatever, you know? And then there's Paul McCartney with his suit jacket or whatever the hell he had. Like, he didn't have, like, a big, you know, furry coat like the other two guys had. And then Ringo's got, like, this red slicker, like he's ready for a rainstorm. Which is kind of cool. Yeah. It was just, and again, well, not again, one of the things I kind of missed was you see so much of the process of Lennon and McCartney, the writing of the song. I was hoping to see a little bit more of some sort of interaction where Ringo was coming up with these signature. Again, Ringo doesn't get the kind of credit that he should of being a pioneer on that drum set. And I've said this, and I've defended Peter Criss on this. You know, whether it's Strutter, you know, whether it's the drum groove in 100,000 Years. You know, whether it's the intro fill into Shock Me. These are, just like there's like a Led Zeppelin. These are licks on a drum set, you know, and that whole like kind of get back. And he's playing on the floor tom and all these different things. And the way he uses his ride cymbal. I was hoping to see a little bit more of the process of him going through certain ideas, but you would kind of just see from scene to scene, you know, where he was evolving, but there was no really. There's some points where you see Paul saying to George, "Well, no, you know, put the kick here or put the, you know." But I was hoping to hear Ringo actually articulate some of this drum language. I was hoping, because you heard the guitar language, you heard a vocal thing, a bass thing, piano thing. That as a drummer, I sort of was hoping. And maybe Ringo's just like, you know, you see, he's very, very kind of quiet and does his thing and seems super like respectful, and you know, that's the one thing I was hoping to see that was, and maybe it just didn't exist. I don't know.
Right. So which of the three parts, Finn, was your favorite?
Probably has to be the second part. You know, definitely.
So all three of us said the second part. Interesting.
Yeah. And you know, I love the rooftop performance. I've always loved that performance. And now again, to really find out that those were the takes on the record, like I said, somehow that's slipped my mind, makes it even that more special that, you know, they were working on these things in the studio, and it just so happens they used the stuff. The performances was so good and that's the thing too. As I'm watching this, thinking like, all right, are these songs really flushed out yet? Are they really ready for recording? And now they're going on the roof, and you hear them, and now that's all we know. You know, so my point being is that maybe they weren't, but even if they weren't, you know, it's kind of like this is how you heard them all your life. You know, there's no other third chord in Get Back. You know what I mean? It is what it is. But I just thought that was kind of really fascinating how great the performances were on the roof. You didn't hear mistakes. I didn't hear bad notes. Right. You know what I mean? It just, and as a musician who rehearses and goes through and writes, to me that was incredible. Just to see the level of talent, you know, of these guys.
Yeah.
So Mara, maybe you can help me.
Fooling around. Yeah. I'm just saying there was so much fooling around. I didn't even think they were ready to go up and perform. So they're the freaking Beatles, you know.
Yeah. Mara, maybe you could help me with this one, right? So to me, I've always known the song "Don't Let Me Down," right? And so I'd say it's probably one of my top 10 Beatles songs, right? I happen to like that song a lot. But I was like, again, I don't think this is on Let It Be, and I look and it wasn't. And I'm like, but I can't find what album it is on. So what wasn't that supposed to be on Let It Be? And then they didn't put it. What's the story behind that? Help me.
You know what's funny?
Casual.
The archaeologist. There he goes.
For those who watch, and I swear we did not set this up.
Look at this. Look what it says. Right. Get Back with Don't Let Me Down and 9 other songs. It went from being on the album cover to not being on the album at all.
Right. And why not?
it winds up as a B-side.
Right.
It winds up on a B-side, and I don't know the thinking behind that. I really don't. It shows, obviously it's on compilation albums. It's on it during a session where John isn't really contributing a whole lot of material. You would think that this, one of his better songs, "Don't Let Me Down," would be included. I don't know why it's not included.
Yeah, to me, in part one, I kept, to your point, I'm like, is John going to come in with any songs anytime soon? Because I don't see him except for "Don't Let Me Down," and they kind of kept going to that song over and over again.
Exactly.
And I'm just like, what's the reason that wasn't on the album? But
I don't know if fascinating. Did Phil Spector not think it was worthy of inclusion because he couldn't really touch that song with strings? I don't. It's a very good question.
And then do you know what he like? It's some of the times when he sings a second or third verse, John is sometimes like mumbling gobbledygook type words. Do you know what he says? Because I was curious about that also.
He blew the line. Actually, that's one of the mistakes on the roof. He does blow the line. It's gibberish. And was that chemically induced? Probably. But it's a solid song, and the take that ends up on the B side of the single is I think it's this.
It's never ending.
No, that's "For You Blue."
Oh.
I'm sorry, that's not the right one.
Don't mess up the mantle.
It's I don't know, good song.
Yeah,
wasn't included. I wish I knew why.
And I'll just add this at the end here. I've obviously made many the reference during this that I'm a casual fan, and I don't hide behind that. I certainly appreciate, respect everything the Beatles have done, but Vin knows this. I often say, I've only seen Paul McCartney once live, and that is the only concert I've ever been to in my life where I felt like I was in the presence of royalty, is the best way for me to say it.
Yeah.
And as much as I was never a diehard like the two of you guys, and certainly not like you, Mario, when I saw Paul McCartney, which is about 5 years ago at this point, it was just amazing to me that night. And of course, I know all of Beatles songs. I know all of his songs, but like one after the other, I'm like, holy crap, this guy wrote this song. Oh my God, this guy wrote that song. Oh, holy crap. Oh my God, there's this one also. It's just like, I've never been to a concert where I had that feeling. And I've said this before. I thought I was going to have that same feeling when I saw the Rolling Stones. It wasn't even close. It was not even close to me at all. I will say hands down, I don't put the McCartney show in my top 10, maybe top 15 concerts ever, but it is without a doubt the only time I ever felt I was in the presence of royalty. And that's from a casual fan. So I could only imagine that feeling of people like yourself going to see these guys.
Was that at the Nassau Coliseum?
No, actually I was supposed to go to Giant Stadium with Vin, I think, if I remember right.
Yeah.
And like 2 weeks before, I realized that I had tickets to a concert the same day as like my cousin's Sweet 16. And I was so pissed. I'm like, I want to see McCartney one time before it's too late. So I ended up, I think, selling the tickets to Vin, and one of his friends took my ticket. And McCartney was playing Washington, D.C. like that Wednesday. And the Wednesday morning, I found tickets on sale for $20 a piece, and I got for me and my daughter, and we were sitting in the upper deck, first row, right by the stage, in an arena, not a stadium. So it was the best $20 purchase I ever. And we drove there, saw the concert, and then turned around and drove home, my daughter and I. So
wow, that's great. That's great.
Yep, absolutely.
So all right, so let's put the question to you as being like the casual Beatle fan. How now do you feel about the Beatles? Like, did it get you more interested in maybe some of their back catalog, or you're just like, all right, I enjoyed this. This is good. Do you have more respect? Do you like what's your overall feel?
I can't have more respect because I've always had 100% respect. So I can't have more respect. That's impossible. I'm able to separate my opinion from the reality of the situation, right? So my opinion is, I like some of the Beatles stuff. Some, and I've said this to you before, Vin. Oh God, I'm about to get crucified. I know it. Some of the music to me sounds dated. right? From the technology that was available at the time. When you put on a Beatles album, you know that was recorded in the 60s, not the 70s, 80s, 90s, or current, right? And for me as a music listener, I've just always had a little bit of a hard time with that, right? So this is what, like I said, this is where I'm getting crucified. Yes, Vincent?
I want to raise my hand and interrupt you
Yes.
because we're going to get into a little debate here. He's always said this about artists like the Stones, like Zeppelin, and who. Even when we were growing up, yeah. I remember saying, "Wow, who's next?" Yeah, it's all right, man. I'm like, "How do you not have this record?" No. Like, he was not a guy who listened to Zeppelin and the Who, and he was putting on like a Rupert Holmes Pina Colada song instead, and I was just like, all right, and so he's always been kind of like a non-classic rock guy, which I always found fascinating as a huge Kiss fan, which came from that era. But my question to you is, because it contradicts you as love bootlegs, and I've hated bootlegs for years because I don't like the way they sound, and you love them. I'm like thinking, gee, this doesn't make much sense. You could listen to a horrible bootleg and enjoy that, but the sound of these other records bothers you. So that's the thing that...
Because it's not about looking for perfect sound at all. Mm-hmm. It's about the fact that when I put on those albums from the 60s and all the artists that you mentioned, they sound dated, right? And I purposely use that word. I didn't say they sound bad, right? But they sound from a certain era that I wasn't born, and I have a hard time to some degree relating to. Saying that, I will go back more recently in the last like 5-10 years and listen to Led Zeppelin more now than I ever did in my life, right? I've listened to the Who a little bit more in the last 5-10 years than I ever have in my life. And then I'm not saying any of this is bad, quite the opposite. I notice the foundation of everything that I love comes off this foundation. I understand that, I know that. That's why I said I can't have more respect. That's impossible. It's absolutely impossible. But if I'm listening to some of these Beatles songs, they do sound dated to me. I don't know how else to say it. It doesn't mean they're not great songs, but they still sound dated.
Yeah, I don't. I mean, look, if I hear like, She Loves You, yeah, it has a certain like feel of that time. But if to me, like, Let It Be is like timeless. I don't hear that song and it sounds dated. You know
I would
what
agree
mean?
with you on that. Yes, on that song, I would agree with you. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So.
And look,
but I get what you're saying. I understand what you're saying.
Yeah. But saying that, so let me ask you this question: will you rewatch this documentary again?
Yes.
At some point,
I knew not to ask you. My question to you, Mario, was going to be: are you going to watch this documentary as soon as we hang up? That was going to be my question to you.
It's playing now.
There you go. So I knew your answer, Mario. But
I'll definitely watch it again, no doubt. What I will do before that is I have the Beatles anthology set, and I'm going to go back and watch that, because now this is usually what happens when I, when I watch something or new, and then I go back and watch, like, even like when the Kiss documentary, when I went out and got the Kissology discs and I started watching them again, because you're in that, you're feeling, you smell it in the room, and now you want to get immersed in stuff that they've released, because the Beatles anthology, those records were incredible at the time, because we got like, official releases of different takes of songs that we loved, and so with the records came out the video to tell the story, which was awesome. And at that time, Harrison was still alive, which is wonderful to see. There's many scenes where, and I recommend it for people who's never seen it, that the three of them are sitting outdoors somewhere, and and they're just talking, and it's just kind of nice to know. I know we know that Ringo and Paul get along, and they're still alive, but through the years, whether there was tension or not, I truly believe that if Lennon was still alive, they would have had a reunion at some point. It would have happened. It's a shame that could never happen, but it's nice to see that the three remaining Beatles who were alive at that time were able to be a part of this documentary, and it's just some wonderful footage in there, and you see even then the camaraderie, these guys, and the love that they have for each other.
Now I know in the 90s they did a song. I know obviously John had already passed away, but they did a song.
Free as a Bird.
Free as a Bird, right?
And two of them, yeah.
And what was the other one? Was
Real
it Real
Love?
Love?
Real Love.
Okay. Yeah,
Which Mario, those were two like demo ideas or whatever that Lennon had, and then they brought in Jeff Lynne to kind of produce it, and
aren't they talking about doing something like that again with another unused demo? Did I read that properly like a few weeks ago?
I think I did hear about that.
I hope so, but I didn't.
Yeah. Yeah, to Mike's point, there's something else I think they were talking about doing the same treatment to. I don't remember what the song or where.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
There's plenty of demos.
Right.
Yeah.
There's plenty.
And for you,
Yeah.
Mario, is that obviously it can never be as good as the four of them getting in the studio today and recording, which is impossible, like Vince said. But does that interest you as a diehard fan to hear them go back and maybe take an old demo and build it up today in 2021?
Yeah, and anything that keeps them on the map and brings in some new fans, keeps them relevant. I have no problem with that. At first I was like, John's not around for this anthology, but does that mean the other three can't, take a victory lap? Because look, the work they did was tremendous, and if they do it again, I'm here. I'll listen. I'll give you my.
Would you want
honest
Paul and
opinion.
Ringo to tour together?
I don't think that would happen because they would carry the weight of the Beatles on their
no
shoulders.
pun intended there, huh?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, carry the weight, exactly. And let's face it, the Beatle name is a tremendous weight. I mean, every time, you like the Paul McCartney show. Every time he hits the stage, he has to cocktail his solo work with the Beatles stuff, and he's no fool. He's no fool on the hill. He knows, and I saw him at the Coliseum for the Driving Rain tour. And as soon as he steps up to the microphone and says, I'm going to do something for my new album,
Crickets.
everybody goes to the bathroom, gets another drink or whatever. And then they hear the opening notes of a song they love, and everybody comes back. So if the two of them tour together, I think that would be tough for them. I think that would be tough.
That being said, I know Mario has seen it and I've seen it. The Ringo and his all-star band, while he's still doing those things, you should go and see them because it's great. It's great. And it's great because not only do you hear, the Ringo stuff, but if he's got like Steve Lukather of Toto, you're going to hear some Toto stuff. If you got Greg Raleigh, who played with Santana and Journey, you're going to hear that stuff. If you got the guy, what's the guy's name from Mr. Mister?
Steve Farris or something like that.
No.
He was
the guitar player. Yeah. But anyway, you hear some of the Mr. songs.
Right.
If you and Mario, I think you saw a show with who
Peter Frampton.
But yeah, this is great stuff.
It was such a fun show. It was at the Jones Beach Theater, and Peter Frampton was the special guest, and you heard at least 4 or 5 Frampton Come Alive, hits, and Jack Bruce was the bass player.
Alive, yeah.
So you got to hear those wonderful songs, but and Ringo really lets everybody do what they want to do, and then of course it all comes down to the big finale. He goes, if you don't know this next song, you're at the wrong concert.
Yeah, and he's got such a a great personality. He does that Ringo kind of he does that little waddle that he does, and then interesting. And this is one of the things I wanted to bring up about Ringo because I'm going to defend him to the death. He's got such a swagger when he plays the drums. You see when he plays, he's got this little hop and one drummer said, I think it's J.R. Robinson said, who, if you don't know who J.R. Robinson is, he's played on all the stuff that he worked with Quincy Jones, Off the Wall, he worked on Thriller, the stuff he did with Lionel Richie, with Shaka Khan. He's one of these session guys who's played on Steve Winwood, a zillion hits that you've heard. And I watched his instructional video, and he said, when you're doing a performance or you're doing a track, as a drummer, you have to kind of dance behind the kit when you get your feel. If you just sit there and you're like this, that stiffness is going to translate in your playing. And if you watch Ringo, he's got this thing, that he's got this certain hop, and and as a drummer, I could totally relate, and I hear it. You know what I mean? That made him truly a unique guy, and then somebody who was copied a lot, by his style. So to the point of when you see Ringo's All-Star Band, he's got Greg Bissonette, who's the drummer, who I know, Mike, you know him. When we went to go see David Lee Roth, that's how we came to know Greg Bissonette back in the 80s. But he'll then go behind...
Road over Abbey Road.
Right, exactly. But I'm never going to forgive you for that.
I know you're not. That's all. I got it back here. So you ready for what Courtney told me? It's totally off topic here.
Yeah.
You ready?
Oh
this
my
is
God!
Be
do I have to hold on?
Roast for her.
Yeah.
She's since taken it back, but on the cruise this year, she said to me, "Burn, bitch, burn" might be a better song than Detroit Rock City.
Oh, yeah, you did tell me that. Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
Oh man, I'm
Yeah.
glad I got that now on video for all to hear.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anyway,
Yeah.
so I
Yeah.
can say Tobacco Road I like better than that, and I don't know if that's really
Well,
a true statement. It just
Abbey
sounds
Road's
funny
not
to
a
say.
song,
I
by
know
the way.
that. I
Abbey
know.
Road's not.
Obviously, I know that, and I don't even know that I would say that Tobacco Road's better than Abbey Road. I'm just being silly here. But anyway, go ahead, continue with your story.
No. I was just saying that it's great seeing Ringo play now still while you can, and what I'm doing here is promoting again these guys when while they're still alive, while we could go see them.
Yeah.
Mike, we always talk about this. Unfortunately, this is not when this is not a discussion where someone's passed, but we always say at the end of those discussions, right? Go celebrate these artists. How great they are. These guys, if they're still touring, go see them, because I know me, even I think we've talked about this. I've never seen The Who, which is incredible that I've never seen
I'm
one of
always
my
stunned
all-time.
when you say that.
Yeah. And you always say, well, if they come around, would you want? I'm like, yeah, I'll go. You know what I mean? And I kind of like when Entwistle passed, I was like, ugh, I can't. Entwistle was such a hero to me, and I just didn't see them as the same, which is kind of silly in a way because, it really is Pete Townsend lyrics and music on pretty much everything, and you still got Roger Daltrey, the voice of that.
Exactly.
And I've loved for years Pino Palladino, who's filled in. I don't know if he's still playing bass with The Who. And it was cool, even that. And this was not a purposeful tie-in, but Zach Starkey, his son, is playing drums with The Who, which is awesome, So,
So did you ever answer to me if you were going to watch it again?
I said yes.
Okay, I wasn't sure.
I said yes. Yes, I said
I thought you were pulling a Mario, like Mario. What's your favorite part? Well, I like this scene. Then you're gonna watch it again. Well, there's this tour and
the anthology. The anthology came out, and I'm gonna watch that.
Exactly. All right. So you're gonna. Yeah. So I'll say this. I've watched it, and I made sure I watched it each night. This way, I could be prepared for this conversation today. And I said to my wife, who's probably more of a Beatle fan than I am, I said so last night. Do you want to watch this Beatles documentary that's on? She's like, didn't you watch it? I'm like, I'll watch it again. So I was ready to jump right back in last night, right at literally, I finished the third episode yesterday afternoon, and I was ready to jump in last night and watch part one.
I'm proud of you. Proud of you.
Thank you. And I have a feeling, since we're going to both be home, her and I, today and tomorrow, that we might jump in and watch it again. So as much as I'm a casual, and I've hope that I held my own against the two heavyweights over here, right? But I do think I'm jumping back in again and watching it in the next 24 hours one more time.
I think that says a lot.
So let me ask our gracious host, who is a casual fan, is this going to make you run out and buy Let It Be? Or is that a record you already have?
No, I don't have it, but
okay.
I knew a lot of the songs already. Again, I have probably half of them downloaded on iTunes to begin with. But like I said at the start, I never didn't have an appreciation for I'd be a complete. I should have my show taken away from me if I didn't appreciate what the Beatles have done for music, right? There's no denying that. I certainly know at least half the Beatles songs in existence, if not more, but do I feel an urge to go out and buy a record that I don't have? No, I'm content. Okay. I'm content. But if a song comes, if we were sitting in the car and you put it on, I'm like, oh yeah, this is good. I enjoyed this. This is good. I just don't fully connect with it for whatever reason. I think it goes back to that sound or whatever. But I'll gladly watch it again.
There's a friend.
Vin's gonna go cuddle with his album when we're done with this.
This is actually the when did this come out? 2009, Mario?
I think 2009.
I bought this one. Yeah, I bought this one. So, not that I don't want to promote the one or the other, but I am. This is the 2000, which you can still get this remaster.
Yeah.
Me and Mario both agree that the latest remaster that they came out with, or remix or whatever, this is better.
That's much better.
That being said, it's on my Christmas list, and I think my brother's getting it for me. So thanks, Pete.
Now, Mario, I will say this: as much as I'm not going to go out and buy an album, yesterday I had to drive my daughter after watching all three parts. I was driving her to Brooklyn for something, and I did pull up the Let It Be deluxe edition or whatever it was that came out, and I did listen to some of those alternate takes just because I was curious. Because again, that was one of the things I wanted to see in the movie that I didn't, so I kind of felt like I needed to fill that void. So I did do that. Am I going to do it again next week? Probably not.
Speaking of alternate takes, it's funny.
Ringo Starr comes out of his closet.
Yeah, I know you're a bootleg guy.
Yeah.
For years, this is what we had. Albums like this.
Hold it more center, like to where you are. Move it over. Let me see. That's interesting.
Okay.
Interesting.
And all of the songs that are listed here are alternate takes of Shake, Rattle, and Roll, Two of Us, Maxwell's Silver Hammer. And, these, it's the insert
nice
type of bootleg. This is definitely a relic from the 70s.
I was gonna say that's either a 70s or an 80s. That's the way they did bootleg in the late
and
70s.
Then they got really, they started making bootlegs that look like real albums.
Sometimes better.
But I remember being in the Village with my friend Tim, and this Sweet Apple Tracks was always behind the counter as a picture disc for like $175. And when you're 16, where are you coming up with $175? So the legacy of the bootlegs, especially in relation to Let It Be, is just repackaged and repackaged. And so it's nice to have the cleanest versions out there.
Absolutely. Anything else about the documentary that we didn't bring up that either of you guys want to mention before we wrap up?
Vinny, anything?
I think I said way too much.
No,
I was a blabbermouth.
Blabbermouth. No, you had very good insights. I think Let It Be. And again, I'm a simple Beatle fan to make happy. If they just reissued Let It Be with a bonus disc, the movie, I would have been, hey, this is great, But to have this 8 hours of this, and now there's a 13-hour version that might make it to home video. I don't really see, and I was talking with Tim the other night. I don't see the need to have, Let It Be come out. But I do want those 3 songs. If there's going to be a 13-hour version, there's no reason to leave out Two of Us, Let It Be, and Long and Winding Road. Would just, Paul behind the piano for 2 of those songs. And it's wonderful to see John and, doing like the Everly Brothers. Two of Us is a great song. And it is a nod to Phil and Don, and we just lost another Everly brother this year. So I would like to see those 3 songs added.
One other thing that I forgot, you guys could correct me where I'm wrong on this, but one of the things I thought was cool, I think it was Get Back. There was a version in the documentary with John singing lead on it. What was it, Get Back? I remember it was one of the Paul McCartney songs where they had a version with John singing lead on it. Do you guys remember what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I do remember something to that effect. Yeah, I don't know.
Might not have been Get Back, but I thought it was where John took a shot at the lead vocal. I was like, oh, that's pretty cool. But obviously, I might not be remembering the right song. So
there's a lot of moments in this documentary that are like that, So I don't think it's in my notes, but it probably happened. And again, it was like Paul singing, Strawberry Fields.
Right.
Yeah.
Just these nice little moments, of their friendship, that I credit, Peter Jackson. My God, what that guy must have gone through. I mean, it looks like it was filmed yesterday. It's so clear. It's so great. He did a phenomenal job. Yeah. And if there's a longer version, so be it,
And the thing
that comments for us, Ben?
Yeah, the one closing comment that I had was watching this. I couldn't help but, think about my good friend Al Russo, who passed last year. It's going on almost a year ago. A huge Beatles fan, and I was just watching, thinking, I'm very fortunate to be able to see this, and I wish he could have seen this. And it's again, I'm very thankful of, time I have to appreciate things. It's not just a documentary; it's people, it's human interaction. But that's one of the things that was coming across my mind, that we're blessed. It's like we were given as Beatle fans, we were given a gift, in this, and so that, I guess I'm giving a formal thank you to Peter Jackson and those people who were behind this, Disney, and give them a lot of credit for this, because it's just wonderful to have this a part of my life, and it's just something that'll be forever in me, that that I'll take with me till whenever.
I
So
thought it was very appropriate that they released it on Thanksgiving, right?
Mhm.
It's like, in some ways, it's like, thanks for giving us the music that kind of set the stage for everything that we love, whether you are a fan of the Beatles, 70s music, 90s music. Today it all started really with that era and the Beatles. So I thought it was a perfect day. And like you said, Ben, we always say this, you don't know what tomorrow's going to bring. And you were talking before about Ringo Starr. So if he does come around, give me a call. I'd gladly
All
go
right.
see it. And
Maybe the three of us will go see it.
yeah, I like that.
That would be
good.
fantastic.
That'd be great. But
Yeah.
I think that's about a wrap for this one. I want to thank you both for joining, and definitely I want to thank you both for making sure that you took the time during a holiday weekend to. I know you would have, Mario, you would have watched it anyway. I'm sure you were probably setting your alarm at 3 a.m. Like, oh, they just dropped. Let me go watch it right now. But I appreciate you guys making sure. Ben, I know you had a busy schedule this weekend, doing some gigs or whatever, and
Yeah.
like you said to me when we were talking about it, well, it's the Beatles. Of course, I'm going to watch it, but I appreciate you guys making sure you were ready to have the conversation literally, 24 hours after the last episode dropped. And like I said, I'm probably going to be watching it again this week, and I'll be curious if you guys do. You could kind of shoot me messages, let me know. I'm curious what the viewers thought. I can't imagine people who watch this not being totally excited and wanting the 13-hour version, like Mario said, or the 60-hour version, like all the diehards want. But to everybody watching, I'm curious what you guys thought. What did you like about it? What didn't you like? Is there anything that you didn't like, whether it's the edit or something else? Let us know your thoughts. And Mario, Vin, thank you so much for joining me. This is a blast.
You're thanking us, but thank you. I mean, it was nice to have this conversation.
This is a lot of fun.
Appreciate it.
All right, everybody, thanks for watching. Until next time.
Double Ringo.
Double Ringo.
We all knew that.
Right? Later. Alrighty, there you have it. I'd like to thank Vincent and Mario for joining me on a great conversation about the new Beatles documentary, Get Back. We'd love to hear your thoughts and your comments. When you leave your thoughts and comments, let us know if you're a diehard fan like Mario and Vincent, or if you're more of a casual like myself. All opinions are welcome, and we look forward to hearing all your thoughts and comments. If you're watching this on YouTube, hit that subscribe button below. If you're listening to one of my podcasts, subscribe over there as well. Also, head on over to Facebook and follow my page, The Rock Experience with Mike Brunn, where each and every day we talk about all the rock and roll music that you love. You can also follow me on Instagram and Twitter as well. That's it for this episode. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. See you all next time.